All right, just when you think it couldn't get any crazier, the saga of Michael Flynn continues. A D.C. Circuit Court has ruled that the case must get sent back down to Judge Sullivan. And guess who predicted it back on this show in June when the Federal Appeals Court threw out the ruling? Alan Dershowitz. Take a listen.
Let me just ask this as a layperson. Can Mike Flynn pop open a couple, Miller Lite or Bud Lights tonight, sit back and finally celebrate his legal woes being over?
Yes, a beer, but no, not a champagne.
All right, well, let's bring in the person who saw this coming, Alan Dershowitz, professor emeritus at Harvard Law School, Newsmax analyst, and, as always, the author of Guilt by Accusation. And one more thing, the birthday boy, Professor Dershowitz. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm 82 today and still walking 7 miles a day and trying to keep in shape.
You look fantastic. So thank you for spending your birthday with us.
Sure.
All right, Professor, we talked about this before. I can't believe it. The D.C. Circuit sent this thing back to a judge that is clearly biased, clearly doesn't like him. How is this possible, and how can we expect Judge Emmett Sullivan to rule in an unbiased way when he's made it clear what his position on Flynn is?
Well, not only that, he was a litigant in this case. He's the one who brought it to the United States Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit. He has a stake in the outcome of this case. I have to tell you, I've been practicing law 55 years. I've never seen a situation where a judge is both a litigant in the case and a judge in the case. The court made the right decision in saying the writ of mandamus doesn't lie. That's a very technical procedural term, but normally you only get a writ of mandamus if there's no possibility of an appeal, but there's an appeal here. But they made the wrong decision when they sent it back to Judge Sullivan. They should have sent it to an unbiased, objective judge. The judge has his own lawyer in this case. The judge has asked for amicus briefs to come in and support him. Everybody is trying to suck up to this judge and do what he wants to do because they have future cases in front of them. This is not justice when a person has to be judged by somebody who has a stake in the outcome of the case. I believe it violates the rules of judicial conduct. I believe it violates the rules of ethical conduct for the bar. You can't wear two hats. You can't be a prosecutor in robes, which is what Judge Sullivan has become. He has a point of view and outcome. The court said he arrived at this point of view from listening to evidence and listening to the case. So that means he can't be recused. But that's not common sense. Common sense says when a judge has already decided the outcome of the case and has hired his own lawyer to defend his position, you need another judge in there.
Well, in talking about violating the rules, Sidney Powell, Flynn's lawyer, as she often does, took to Twitter to react, saying that the decision was, quote, a disturbing blow to the rule of law. Now, were you surprised at how this decision broke down? It was actually an 8-2 ruling and sending it back down to the lower court. That was, probably more that decided against Flynn than most people expected, even though, the D.C. Circuit is more liberal. Were you surprised by that?
No, I think the 8-2 decision reflects 8 justices, 8 judges who said, send it back. Let's wait. Let's see what he decides. Then we can reverse him when the case is brought up on appeal. What shocked me is that they actually decided the issue of allowing this judge to continue on the case. They were just dead wrong about that. And that was a decision they made. That's not something they deferred to later. They said he is not recused or disqualified under the rules. I've been teaching legal ethics for more than a quarter of a century, and I have to tell you that the rules of legal ethics don't generally permit a judge to sit as a judge in his own cause. Even the Bible says that you can't be a judge in your own cause. And you would think that here's a guy who has staked his reputation, hired a lawyer, a former judge, to defend him, brought the case to the Court of Appeals, and now is going to sit in judgment over himself.
So I do have to ask you this, Alan, because in her book, License to Lie, Judge Sullivan was the hero. And that's a real irony here. So what has happened to him between the Enron task force stuff and the fallout of that Powell worked on to now with Flynn? Why is he doing this?
Judge Sullivan's a great judge. He's had a terrific reputation over the years. He is admired by me, by so many other people. He just feels very strongly in this case that he sentenced Powell. You know, he sentenced the Flynn. He made the determination, and he thought the Justice Department is playing politics. You know, whether he's right or wrong, it's not his call. It's not a judge's call to determine why the Justice Department has decided to drop a case, unless there's corruption. I mean, if there's a hearing and somebody's paid a bribe, that's within the jurisdiction of the judge. He should then report it to the Justice Department. But just because he disagrees with the decision, our separation of powers leaves it to prosecutors to decide who to prosecute. Judges only decide cases and controversies. They're the umpires. They call balls and strikes. They're not the commissioner of baseball who establishes the rule.
Professor, I'm out of time, and I know it's your birthday, but because you predict so well, where does this thing go real quickly? What is the next step? Does Flynn appeal? What happens? Because I imagine they're not excited to go back to see Judge Sullivan.
Well, it's all about timing. I think they're going to try to slow it down to make sure there's no decision until after this election or after the president, if he were to lose, leaves office, because they don't want a pardon to be given to
Flynn. But what does Flynn do? What does Flynn do? I mean, Flynn, that's exactly the opposite. He wants this thing done.
He wants it done. He should be moving. And the court said in a decision, we expect this to be done in an expeditious manner. They went out of their way. If I were his lawyer, I would demand a hearing now, today, this week. Let's get a decision. Then it can be appealed legitimately.
Okay. All right. Professor, happy birthday. Thank you for coming back.
Thank you.
We're going to check in to see how right you continue to be soon.